This is a video documentation for my ship, the Chungus, the heavy lift ship. As you can see, it's lifting the Odin Viking. It's not my creation, that's from the workshop, but it has it all the way out of the water. For some reason, I cannot get that thing's throttle to set to exactly 0, so that is why propellers are still like that. Okay, so first thing I want to actually show is all of the different propulsion engines. It has all of these large engines for propulsion. It could actually get up and go pretty fast. It's about 30 knots with no load, and with the load it's about 23, 24 knots. Okay, and it has two other generators, or two other large engines for generators. One of them I leave running all the time because if it keeps cycling on and off, it messes with a lot of the controllers over here. It keeps resetting them, but it does have an option where you can just turn that off and it'll go off as soon as the battery is charged. See, there it goes, it just went off, and then it'll eventually start again, or you can just keep it running all the time. And if it actually gets below a certain amount, then it'll actually start the second one as well, but that almost never happens. Even running all the electronics, like all the radars, it still just runs on one, and it's only running at about 4 RPS, so it uses very, very little fuel. Okay. So having this ship attached onto here, I've used these little arms over here to push and keep it centered, because I noticed that if I didn't do that, I had a really hard time keeping bigger ships centered, and they would get off to one side, and when you try to lift it out of the water, obviously it's off balance, and you'd have a lot of issues. Okay, so this is all of our lift controls here. Okay, each one of these is an individual ballast tank. You can say what the target level is and what its current level is, and you just click a button and it'll open a little electric door underwater, and you can see it'll fill up to about 10%. Okay, and then it'll stop, and it's usually pretty close, and if it actually goes over a little bit, it'll pump it as well. And then each one of these has 5 or 6 pumps to pump it overboard. You can see it going over right there. Okay. In addition, we also have altitude measurements forward and aft to kind of measure how it's sitting in the water with a load. This a really heavy load, so it has a really hard time balancing down. So you have all these different controls you can control individually, or you can raise and lower the whole bank at once. So all of these usually get controlled as one, and then the last 2 tanks on each side and the forward tanks are controlled individually. And as you can see, these are trying to fill as well, to try and keep this thing, try and get that bow angle down a little bit. So you saw that one, actually the green came on there because it filled up too much past its target there, and it's pretty close. I was still trying to fill, but it's not far enough down in the water for it to do that. So the forward one I may eventually change to actually have pumps in it. Okay, these 2 controls here are only for the clamps. They have magholes on them, but it glitches out if you actually use that. When it's actually submerged down in the water, just pushing these, they're operated in pairs, so just pushing it will keep it centered good enough that I was able to get out of the water. I didn't even really need the winches. I put the winches on afterwards, so that we can try and see how it performs in a storm. I haven't done that yet. Okay. Still needs a lot of interior details, not a whole lot of anything yet. The only real details I have is individual breaker rooms. So you have different breakers for each thing. So each one of these buttons controls a relay to turn things on and off. Okay. You have fuel transfer stuff. You have 2 diesel tanks port and starboard, so you have pumps to pump in and out, and you also have connections topside, so you can pump fuel in and out that way as well. These are your 2 generators. As you can see, this one's not actually running. This one is running. It's taking 0.2 liter fuel per second. Not very much. These guys are idling. They're obviously kind of using a lot of fuel just sitting there idling, but you don't have to do that either. And then behind that you actually have another bank of them back there. You have all these tanks here. Won't go in there right now because it's full of water, but you can actually access all the way to the end through the ballast tanks if you needed to. Okay, so as far as bridge equipment goes, you have port and starboard automatic anchors. The only problem is they sometimes get stuck on the nose of the ship, so I need to adjust the length, but they lower and release automatically. This is MR and Jersey's navigation light controls. Really like those. I use those on everything. And then you have different floodlights and everything here. Okay. You have just a forward search radar. And then one thing I am pretty proud of, I use these Horus sonars for everything, sonar and radar. But one thing I want to point out is, when I want to go faster, I have a smooth bottom of the ship. And then when I actually want to deploy that, you can see that it pops out the bottom there. And we get our sonar radar data. Okay, I disable it, and it sucks back up in there, so you can go faster. Let's get actually moving here. Okay, so it's pretty simple controls. It's just forward and backwards as you let go of the W key. You can see all of our RPMs go back down there. It opens the clutch. Okay, same thing for backwards. The clutching and reverse gear is automatic. Okay, so we'll go full reverse. Now press W. It's back just a little bit there. This is definitely pretty heavy right now. And this is just the regular low gear. If I press the 3 key, you get the high gear. And it's hard to tell. It's probably about 24 knots. Okay, so take off low gear. The other 2 buttons, you have the one for the bow thruster. Anytime you're using the bow thruster or the 2, I'll explain that in a second, but it reverses the props for steering as well. Either one of those, it's hard to hear, but it goes to a low idle when you're not using those, and then as soon as you press it, you get kind of a higher idle, that way you get more power out of it. All you have to do is press left and right on the key with no other throttle, and you can see we get a bow thruster. It works okay. But if you really need to turn faster on a dime, press 2, and what that's going to do is spin 1 prop forward and 1 back. And you can see it turns on a dime. It goes back to its high idle. The neat thing is that also works with the autopilot here. So we're actually pointing this way. So let's say I want to tell it to go this way. as long as you have 1 and 2 on, it'll use the bow thrusters and the reverse props. Another thing, usually we have cameras on the port and starboard bridge wings, fore and aft. So we also have aft-facing cameras to be able to see everything. It's really useful for being able to dock, or if you want to go completely first person and not cheat and use third person. Makes it a lot easier to do that kind of stuff. Each one, of course, has infrared as well.